One of the biggest challenges many people face while upgrading from the PMBOK Guide 6th edition and the 7th edition is that there is not too much direct connection, because when PMI published the PMBOK Guide 7th edition, PMI just reframed completely the guide. So a lot of people lost where are the process, inputs, tools and techniques, outputs. I recorded a video recently about the PMBOK 7th edition that you can check here. And this is talking about the umbrella concept. But when you go to the PMBOK 7th edition, you don't find the processes. However, PMI released the process group, a practice standard. So when you think now about the PMBOK 6th edition, you need to refer and link it to this one. So it's much better now that you think something like that. The evolution of the PMBOK 6th edition is the practice guide, and the PMBOK 7th edition goes on the top of this. And this is exactly what we will discuss here. The million-dollar question. Is the PMBOK Guide 7th a successor of the PMBOK Guide 6? And the answer is, in terms of name, yes, definitely. However, in terms of content, the answer is no. The PMBOK 7th goes on the top, as I said, the umbrella. And then you start asking me, okay, so will PMI or project practitioners continue to use the concepts prescribed on the PMBOK 6th edition? And the answer is yes. Of course, this video is not sponsored by PMI, so I'm talking on my behalf and the common sense that we aim while delivering projects. But PMI did something outstanding recently. PMI decided to turn the content, the process-based content of the PMBOK 6th edition, into a practice guide called the Process Group. It means you use the PMBOK Guide 7th edition as an umbrella for every single delivery method, including one delivery method that is the practice guide. So the practice guide becomes one of the possible delivery methods. Because in the past, if you see my previous video on the PMBOK, I said PMBOK Guide 7th edition goes on the top of the 6th edition. And it sounds strange because usually when you change an edition, you don't change just everything like this one. But now I would say this guide will not exist anymore and will be replaced by this. And then you will ask, oh my God, do I need to study everything again? And the answer is no. The video that I created for the PMBOK 6, it's absolutely the same. And it's basically the same content here with some wonderful improvements. And let me explain what these improvements are. In order to explain this, I prepared these two pieces of information. This is the process flow and the process group. And you see that they are visually identical, okay? They're visually identical. And this was extracted from the PMBOK 6th edition and this one from the practice guide. Both of them you can download here. This you can download for a long time. And this one now you can download also on the same link above. But now let's try to identify similarities and differences. First one, knowledge areas. Does this contain the same knowledge areas? The answer is yes. 10 knowledge areas, the same ones. Integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, human resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder. That's it, the same ones. And regarding process groups, remember, initiation, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. Initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, closing. So absolutely the same 5 process groups. And about the process, if you count here every single of them, you will find the same 49 processes. So hold on. This is the same thing of this. Yes, in 99%. And then, of course, you will ask me, okay, what is the 1% different? And the 1% different is for me a dream I have since the year 2001. I wrote a paper more than 20 years ago called A New Approach to the PMBOK Guide, because I said, at that time, I said, you know, the PMBOK Guide is terrible for you to learn project management, because it's much more like a glossary or a dictionary that you check things, but to learn, you know, I know for those who are studying the PMBOK Guide, it's a nightmare. It's just a nightmare, because you start looking and you get lost in the middle of, you know, 10.2, 0.1, 0.4 and all these ITTOs. And what was the biggest challenge is that at that time, going up to here, you read Chapter 4, Integration, and then you learn all the process on integration. Then Chapter 5, Scope. What do? You read everything on scope. And it goes on up to Stakeholder on Chapter 13. But then it doesn't make sense, because we read in an orderly way. And then we said, you know, it doesn't make sense that. So what was the 1% difference? Is that the whole practice guide is not divided anymore into chapter 4 up to 13. Chapter 4 now became initiating. And this chapter has 2 items on it. 4.1, develop the project charter. And 4.2, identify stakeholders. So the numbering changed from 13.1, first process of stakeholder, to 4.2, second process of initiating. And these, I know this is, many of you may think this is just a bureaucratic thing. But these make it so easier for you to understand what is the mental sequence you should think from the beginning up to the end of a project. So this is chapter 4. And what is chapter 5? All of these becomes chapter 5. That goes from 5.1 integration up to 5.24 stakeholder. Then number 6 becomes executing. Number 7 becomes monitoring and controlling. And number 8 becomes the closing process that will have just 1 item. This is a tiny, small change. But this has a massive impact on understanding how the logic of a project. Because you don't execute a project. And I said this on the video on YouTube and my online courses. I say this all the time. When you divide things into topic or knowledge areas, you are not respecting that in a real project, you do pretty much everything at the same time. So this is exactly, look, on the planning, you are taking basically everything together to have a solid plan. On the executing, you do many different areas. So you don't do quality So you can say, oh, now it's time for me to take care of resources. And this is a big thing. And look, I'm not a big fan of PMP exam prep. And I think people heard I'm saying this maybe a billion times that, you know, if you only study for the exam, you just learn how to pass the exam, but you don't pass on real life challenges in delivering a project. So I need you to understand this. And many people said, now PMI does not require you to know the PMBOK and to memorize this. I'm pretty sure, look, I don't take care of the exam, but I'm pretty sure that nobody will say, what changed from this to this? And then say, oh, now the number is different. No, it's not that. I will doubt heavily that this would be a potential question. However, what is critically important, that now the concept of process group, did you see the name process group? It means that now we are giving much more strength to the process group than to the knowledge area. The knowledge area are only components of our mindset to deliver a project. But the sequence and the way we do, we need to initiate, we need to think, we need to plan. Even if it's a sprint, okay, we need to plan and then we execute, then we go on the monitoring, we do our retrospective and come back. So the PMBOK in the past became this practice guide, and the practice guide is what replaces the old PMBOK. So in the future, people will not remember this anymore. They will remember that there is a practice guide and a potential PMBOK guide that will reflect what? The holistic knowledge of what is managing a project. So this is why, for me, I have a big hope that in the future, for example, the PMP will not be perceived as, you know, the certification where you know 49 processes and this, but the certification that will comprise all the knowledge you may have and you should have to deliver projects from the beginning up to the end. So this is exactly the difference that we see here. Now you can still download this on the website. You can now download this and you will see that basically the difference. And there are other, and this probably is not 1%, it's 0.99%, because there is something like 0.001 that is just small tweaks. And it's not on the inputs, it's not on the tools and techniques, it's even deeper in the description of them. And I prepared this in order to help you all. I prepared also this. That is the practice guide flow. So it's the same flow I did for the PMBOK guide, but now with the numbering and the process. And you can download them. Normally, you can download them, and these will reflect these changes with the new numbering and the new structure, where each chapter, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 8. And you may ask finally, okay, and what about chapter 1, 2, and 3? Chapter 1, 2, and 3 are, I would say, I don't want to say identical, but they are extremely close to the PMBOK 6. So chapter 1, 2, and 3 of the PMBOK 6, chapter 1, 2, and 3 of the Process Group Practice Guide. Chapter 4 up to 13 became chapter 4 up to chapter 8. Instead of knowledge areas, the process was flipped based exactly on what I really begged more than 20 years ago to change. So it's a great progress, and for me something that is much easier to explain and to understand. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I invite you to join us and subscribe the channel. I publish videos around project management, risk management, crisis management, transformation, and technology, and everything that could help us to transform ideas into reality. Join us.